My stepdad smashed my disabled sister into the fridge, then broke her nose with his knee, trembling and bleeding. She crawled to reach her phone and call me. I raced 5 hours through a storm. My mom muttered, "It's just a scratch." What happened next still haunts me. You know, I always thought I understood family, the messy, complicated kind of love that binds you no matter what. But then my sister, May, called me in the dead of night last year, and what she said didn't just shatter my world. It ripped open a horrifying truth about our own mother, revealing a betrayal so deep it still makes my blood run cold. What happened next, you won't believe it. It was exactly 2:14 a.m. when my phone started vibrating, a frantic thrum against my nightstand. At first, I thought it was just my brain playing tricks, but it kept buzzing, glowing, over and over. I squinted blurry-eyed until I saw her name, May. My stomach clenched. She never called that late. She barely called at all, unless something was truly, horribly wrong. I shot upright, instantly awake, and swiped to answer. "Kais," she breathed. Her voice was barely a whisper, forcing me to press the phone hard against my ear. He threw me against the fridge. "What? Who? May, what are you even saying?" My mind was racing, still tangled in the remnants of sleep. A shallow, ragged breath. "Randall." He just snapped again. Slammed me hard. Then he punched me in the face. She gasped. "I think my nose is broken." I sprang from bed, already reaching for the light switch. "Where are you? Are you safe?" "On the floor, bleeding. Crawling for my phone." Her voice caught, thin as spider silk. He left the room. "Mom's here, but she's just yelling. Says it's a scratch, that I'm being dramatic." Through the line, I could hear my mother's voice, sharp and dismissive. "Stop whining, May. You always want people to feel sorry for you." The air left my lungs. I stood frozen, the phone glued to my ear, my heart battering against my ribs. May, my sister, had suffered a spinal injury 2 years prior. A bad fall, a surgery that never quite healed. She could walk, yes, but slowly with extreme care, each step a testament to chronic pain. When Randall, our stepfather, flew into one of his frequent rages, she was utterly defenseless. "I'm coming," I said, the words a raw, undeniable promise. "Stay put. Keep the phone close. Lock your door if you can." I tried. The lock's broken. Of course it was. "I'll be there, May," I affirmed, already yanking on sweatpants. 5 hours, maybe less if I push it. She tried to speak again, but the connection died. I moved with urgent purpose, snatching my coat, wallet, and keys, shoving my feet into sneakers. A hurried note from my neighbor, Trina, emergency. "Please check on Ellie. Call you soon." I tucked it beneath her door, then sprinted to my car. Outside, a tempest raged. Rain lashed sideways, and the wind howled like an angry beast. Portland rarely saw snow, but tonight felt like the sky itself held a bitter grudge. I didn't hesitate. I couldn't. The gnawing guilt of not answering sooner, of not acting more decisively before, tore at me. I should have pushed harder that last time. When Randall had flung her dinner plate across the kitchen, and it had disintegrated at her feet, I'd warned Mom, told her he was a danger. Her response, "He's just stressed. Don't make a scene." Now May was calling me from the floor. I barreled onto I-5 South, driving at a speed that flirted with disaster. The rain slicked the asphalt, but I pressed on. Every curve in the highway brought a fresh wave of panic, yet I forced my focus, adrenaline a bitter taste in my mouth. Memories surged unbidden. Mom had been warm, loving once. Before Randall, he possessed a peculiar charisma, a smooth, measured way of speaking that drew people in, at least initially. But at home, he was a volatile trigger, and Mom, she always defended him. When May got hurt, she needed an advocate, a shield. Instead, she got Randall's dismissive eye rolls at her labored gait, and Mom's weary sighs, as if May's very existence was an inconvenient burden. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. May, my vibrant, artistic sister, who once sang and painted and possessed a laugh that could stop strangers and make them smile. Now, even her voice quavered. The rain transformed into a freezing sleet as I turned onto the rural roads near their town. My hands cramped from their vice-like hold on the wheel. I drew a deep, shuddering breath, trying to douse the inferno within me, but the heat intensified. A sliver of dawn pierced the storm-darkened sky, accompanied by flashes of lightning. The gravel crunched beneath my tires as I turned onto their street. The porch light, a faint beacon, cut through the clinging fog. I parked, stepped out, and walked directly to the front door. A single knock, no answer. A second, harder knock. Footsteps shuffled inside. The door groaned open. Mom stood there, enveloped in a bathrobe, arms folded, her face utterly blank. "You didn't need to come," she stated flatly. "It's already resolved." I didn't utter a word. I walked past her, barely registering the tight, bitter line of her lips, and went straight to the kitchen. I froze. The bloodstains still marked the refrigerator. The pungent, aggressive odor of bleach hung in the air, as if someone had scrubbed in a desperate frenzy. But streaks of dried, dark blood clung to the enamel like stubborn bruises on skin, smudged, smeared, undeniably damning. I stared at them, my chest growing tight, a vice-like grip around my lungs. Then I saw her. May was a small, crumpled heap on the floor, leaning against the kitchen cabinets. Her hair was a tangled mess, her cheeks swollen, and tissue wadded into her nose. One eye had blossomed into a grotesque shade of purple. But the instant her gaze lifted and met mine, her face fractured. Not with pain, but something far deeper, profound relief. A fragile emotion she had denied herself for too long. "Hey," I whispered, dropping to my knees beside her. Her trembling fingers reached out, and I gently cradled her face, careful to avoid the worst of the bruises. Her eyes welled, but she didn't sob. The tears simply tracked silent paths down her bruised cheeks. "I didn't know who else to call," she whispered. I swallowed the thick lump in my throat. "You did the right thing," I assured her. I wrapped my arms around her, and for a moment, we simply clung to each other. I could feel the shocking thinness of her frame beneath her sweatshirt. Her breath came in shallow, broken hiccups, and she clutched me like a frightened child. "You're here," she murmured, as if still grappling with disbelief. "I'm here," I confirmed, my voice thick with emotion. "And I'm not leaving." Behind us, footsteps creaked on the ancient wooden floor. I turned. Mom stood just beyond the hallway, arms still crossed, still in her robe. Her expression was a strange blend of annoyance and detached indifference. "He left for work," she said, her voice devoid of warmth. "Like a man should. There's no need for dramatics." I didn't respond. I turned back to May, gently brushing hair from her face, my hands trembling. "Do you want to rest a bit?" I asked softly. "I'll make some tea. Check on the house. You just breathe." She nodded, slow and careful. I helped her to the sofa, tucking a soft blanket over her legs. Then I returned to the kitchen, my movements quiet but resolute. The bleach smell was even more potent now. I flung open the windows. Something gnawed at me, something more than anger, more than the helpless guilt that always seemed to cling to this house. Something was profoundly wrong. While waiting for the water to boil for tea, I opened the drawer beside the fridge, searching for a spoon. That's when I saw it. A folder, unassuming manila, tucked beneath a haphazard pile of overdue bills and receipts. It bore no label, but the moment I pulled it free, I knew. Inside were photographs, dozens, each meticulously dated in a scratchy, desperate hand. April, left side rib. June, shoulder bruising. August, wrist discoloration. Some depicted her back, marred by deep blue shadows. Others showed faint patterns of fingertips on her upper arms. And alongside them, hospital reports, ER summaries, X-rays, all stamped, chillingly, accidental injury. I stood there, numb. It wasn't just last night. This had been happening for years. Quietly, hidden, documented, and no one had intervened. I walked back into the living room, the folder pressed tight against my chest. May looked up from the couch, her face pale, but her eyes, sharper now, fixed on the manila in my hands. She froze. "I wasn't snooping," I said softly. "It was just there." She looked away, a long silence stretching between us. "I kept those," she whispered at last, "in case I ever needed to prove it, in case someone believed me." I sank onto the sofa beside her. "I went to the police once," she continued, her voice trembling. Took the photos. They took a report, but Mom followed me there. Told them I fall a lot. Told them I was confused. They believed her. Her fingers clutched the edge of the blanket, as if it was the only thing tethering her to the earth. She told me I'd break the family if I kept lying, May added. Said it would ruin everything. I couldn't breathe. I'm sorry, I managed. I should have seen it sooner. May didn't answer. She simply closed her eyes. I stood and walked to the hallway, each step heavier than the last. Mom stood at the far end, now dressed, brushing her hair as if the morning was entirely normal. You knew, I said, my voice barely a whisper. You knew, and you allowed it to happen. She looked up from the mirror. It's not like she's dying, she said, her voice flat and motionless. Everyone has difficult days. My blood ran to ice. She has fractures, I snapped, each word sharp as a shard, bruises in the shape of hands, a broken nose, and you talk about difficult days? You always were dramatic, Mom muttered. She's not some angel. You think I haven't had to deal with her tantrums? Her constant falling. She didn't fall, I countered, my voice rising. He threw her. Mom rolled her eyes. You just make everything worse. And that's when something inside me gave way. Not with a dramatic crash, but quietly, definitively. Like a door I'd held open for too long, finally swinging shut. I stared at her, the hallway suddenly too cramped, too cold. For the first time, I saw my mother not as a flawed parent, but as a stranger. I stood there, unable to move. Her face remained impassive, almost bored, as if this entire exchange was a trivial irritation. I didn't recognize her anymore. Or perhaps I never truly had. I stepped onto the porch, the ancient wood groaning beneath my weight. Low clouds hung over the hills, heavy with that particular Oregon dampness that seeps into your bones regardless of rain. I pulled my hoodie tighter. My chest burned. My legs trembled, not from fear, but from the certainty that something had to change. May couldn't remain here another night. Another hour even. I had driven 5 hours through a raging storm, believing I was coming to offer comfort. I was wrong. This wasn't a visit. This was a rescue. Inside, she sat on the couch, cradling a chipped mug of tea like it was the only thing keeping her intact. Her nose was still swollen, bruises blooming beneath her eyes, and her wrist had begun to puff. She gave me a shaky nod when I re-entered, as if she'd read my thoughts. Start packing, I said softly. We're not staying. May didn't question. She simply rose, a slow, painful movement, and began to limp toward her room. I followed after a few minutes to help. Her drawers were a mess, and she struggled to lift anything with one injured arm. As she folded clothes with her good hand, I opened her desk, hoping to find her phone charger or medications. One drawer stuck. I tugged harder. Something was wedged at the back. I reached in and pulled out a thick book, an old copy of Little Women, its pages roughly carved into a hollow square. Tucked inside, wrapped in duct tape, was a phone. May! She froze, glanced at the book in my hand, and slowly sank onto the bed. That's the backup, she whispered. Randall smashed the first one. Said, girls like me shouldn't be texting strangers. She looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of the blanket. I bought that with birthday money I hid from Mom, just in case something ever happened again. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't afford to. Not now. Instead, I tucked the phone into my pocket and kept moving. We'll take what we can carry, I told her. You're coming home with me for good. Her lip trembled, but she nodded. I went to the kitchen to gather her medications, and something made me pause by the counter. I remembered setting up a small savings account for her last year. She told me she hadn't touched it, claimed she didn't know how. I pulled out my own phone and logged in. My hands went cold. Every month, like clockwork, her disability checks had been deposited and cashed. Not withdrawn, but cashed. I turned to May, who had followed me silently. Did you use this account? She shook her head. Mom handles it. I blinked. Handles what? She told the people at social services she helps me. Said I can't be trusted with that kind of money. Said it's safer this way. She gives me a little sometimes if I ask nice. I stared at the screen. Thousands gone. All while May wore the same shoes from high school and rationed ibuprofen. I didn't even bother to take a breath before I stormed into the living room. She's your daughter, I snapped. And you've been stealing from her, letting that man beat her. You knew. Mom stood by the hallway mirror, adjusting her earrings as if preparing for a leisurely brunch. She didn't even flinch. You think you're better than me just because you left, she said, not even glancing my way. You don't know what it's like to keep this house running, to make decisions no one wants to make. I did what I had to do. No, I said, my voice low and dangerous. You did what was easiest, and you let her pay the price. She finally turned to face me. Don't you dare come into my house and judge. You left. You ran off to your little life, and left the rest of us to deal with the mess. Before I could retort, the front door slammed open. Randall. He stepped in, shaking rain from his flannel jacket, and froze when he saw me. His eyes narrowed. What's this? May shrank behind me. I stepped forward. We're leaving. Don't say a word. Don't touch her. Just move. His jaw clenched. You think you can just waltz in here and take her? She's not a piece of furniture. She's a person. I corrected him, my voice unwavering. You're not taking her, he stated flatly. I already have. We stared each other down for what felt like an eternity. My hands trembled, but I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. He took a step toward me, and for a split second, I thought he might try something. But then he let out a low, bitter laugh and turned away. Fine, he muttered. She's your problem now. I didn't wait. I turned, grabbed May's small bag and guided her outside. The drizzle had transformed into a steady mist, damp enough that I pulled her hood over her head. Mom remained on the porch, arms folded, lips pressed into a thin, tight line. She said nothing, asked nothing, offered no resistance. She just watched us go. I helped May into the passenger seat, adjusting the seatbelt carefully to avoid her bruised ribs. She leaned her head against the cold window, her breath fogging the glass. I started the engine. It rumbled to life as the gravel crunched beneath the tires and the old driveway vanished behind us. We need help, I whispered into the thick quiet of the car, more to myself than her. But I don't know who we can trust. The road stretched endlessly before us, a dull ribbon of wet asphalt winding through the Oregon countryside. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight, my breath still ragged from leaving that house. Trees blurred past in streaks of gray and green, and rain tapped soft, rhythmic patterns across the windshield. May hadn't spoken a word since we pulled away. Until now. Kais! Her voice was a whisper, hoarse and small. I glanced sideways. She was curled against the window, her sleeve bunched up, a trace of dried blood still crusted beneath her nose. She looked like a child again, like the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. I've been thinking, she murmured. We could go to Gramps. I blinked. Gramps. She nodded slowly, reaching into her backpack and pulling out a worn paperback, something I vaguely recognized from our shared shelf years ago. She opened it gently, and from between the pages slid a pale yellow envelope. The paper had softened with age and handling. He used to write me, she said, just every few months. I couldn't speak. That name. I hadn't heard it in over a decade. I thought Mom had said he died in prison. May nodded, a strange mix of sorrow and defiance in her eyes. She told me that, too, but I never really believed her. He always knew things. Like when I started physical therapy again, or when I got that scholarship you helped me apply for. He'd reference it, just enough to know he wasn't guessing. I pulled over. I didn't even realize I was doing it until the car idled by a grassy ditch and my heart pounded against my ribs. Why didn't you tell me? I wanted to, but you were gone. And Mom would have lost it if she found out. She tore his face out of every photo we had. She called him that criminal and said he ruined her life. I leaned back against the seat, feeling the lie settle like something sour in my gut. All this time, he was still alive. May reached down again, pulling out a second, smaller envelope. This one's from a couple months ago. I kept the return address. She handed it to me. I stared at the small block letters. Eugene, Oregon. Not even an hour from where we sat. I tapped the address into my phone. The signal was weak, but the route popped up. 42 minutes, mostly back roads. He wasn't some ghost of the past. He was real. He was close. We didn't speak much after that. I merged back onto the road, the rain now a gentle mist across the windshield. My thoughts wouldn't quiet. I replayed everything. Mom's cold voice, Randall's sneer, May's broken face. The more I pieced it together, the deeper the rot revealed itself. We believed Mom because we needed to. That's what kids do. You trust your parents like they're gods, until one day they're just people. And sometimes not good people. The road narrowed as we turned onto a gravel path framed by towering fir trees. Faint light filtered through the branches, casting long, trembling shadows over the hood. I slowed as a small, weathered cabin came into view. Set back from the road, surrounded by neatly stacked firewood and overgrown ferns. I parked just outside. May was silent, gripping that same envelope, her fingers trembling slightly. I reached for her hand. Before I could even knock, the porch light flickered on. The door creaked open. A man stepped into view, older, gray at the temples, but tall and upright. His clothes were worn but clean. His face, etched with time, regarded us with a mixture of shock and something almost like apprehension. His gaze landed on May. He froze. "You look just like her," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "Your grandmother." May's eyes welled. "I kept your letters," she said softly. The man stepped back, still stunned, and opened the door wider. "Come in." We entered slowly. The warmth enveloped us first, a soft, steady heat from a wood stove glowing in the corner. The comforting scent of broth filled the small space, and a worn quilt lay folded on a nearby rocker. It felt like walking into another world, one untouched by the venom we had left behind. He didn't bombard us with questions. Instead, he made tea, placed bowls of soup on the table without fuss. No grand pronouncements, just a quiet, steady presence. After we ate, I leaned forward, finally breaking the silence. "We don't have anywhere else to go. Not tonight." "You don't have to explain," he said gently. "You're safe here." It was such a simple sentence, yet the weight of it. I didn't even realize I was crying until I tasted salt at the corner of my lips. I glanced at May. She was watching him, her face open, vulnerable, hopeful. She trusted him. Some part of her always had. But for me, something still held back. A gut feeling. Because if he was safe, then why had Mom worked so relentlessly to erase him? "You're safe here," he repeated, reaching to refill our mugs. But as I looked around that quiet little house, every instinct in me whispered the same thing. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. We didn't sleep much that night. The storm outside had passed, but something else, something colder, was still pressing at the windows. I stayed up on the couch, listening to May's shallow, uneven breathing. I watched the flames flicker in the wood stove for a long time before pulling out my phone again. The voicemail. I hit play for the 4th time. My mother's voice came through, a quiet threat wrapped in silk. "She's still a minor, Kais. You're interfering. Don't forget that. No yelling, no panic, just cold, chilling control." That was what terrified me most. From across the room, May stirred. "Are they coming here?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. She didn't need to specify who they were. "I won't let them near you," I said, forcing the words to sound stronger than I felt. "I promise." Morning arrived in shades of gray. Mist hung over the trees like a veil, and the air smelled of wet pine and wood smoke. Gramps brewed coffee the old-fashioned way, a percolator gurgling on the stove. The scent filled the cabin, comforting and familiar in a way I hadn't expected. We sat at the kitchen table, its wood dented and worn, and I finally asked the question that had tugged at me since the night before. "Why did Mom cut you off?" Gramps took a slow sip. His hands were rough, weathered from years of labor, but they didn't tremble. "She forged checks," he said simply. "Hospice checks. They were supposed to cover your grandma's care near the end." He met my gaze. "I caught her. Reported it. Next thing I knew, she was gone with you too. Changed numbers, changed everything." I blinked. I thought Grandma had passed peacefully, that she had simply faded away. "She died scared," he said quietly. "Alone. Your mother emptied the account and vanished before the final bills even came due." The weight of his words settled like a cold fog in my chest. No amount of denial could cushion the truth anymore. I looked over at May. Her face was pale, her lips pressed tight. She reached for the sugar and accidentally knocked her spoon off the table. It clattered against the floor. She crouched to grab it but paused. "There's a gap," she murmured, pointing to the corner beneath the bench seat. I crouched beside her. One of the floorboards was loose. Gramps frowned. "That's strange." Together, we pried it up. Dust rose. Beneath the plank was a tin box, wrapped in a faded towel. Inside, old Polaroids, a bundle of letters, and a yellowed envelope marked last will and testament. My breath caught. The paper inside was brittle, but the ink still held, dated 12 years ago. I scanned the lines, heart pounding. "In the event of my passing, all property, assets, and holdings shall be equally divided between my granddaughters, Calice and May." My name. Her name. In writing. I looked up at Gramps. His eyes were wide. "I forgot I hid that," he said almost to himself. "Back then, I wanted to protect you too. Your mom was never meant to get a cent." I snapped photos of every page, every signature, my hands steadier than I thought they'd be. "If they try to take her back," I said, my voice trembling with a fresh fire, "this goes straight to the court." Gramps gave a short nod. "You've got your grandma's strength. She would have liked that." Later, as we sat in the living room, the old clock ticking softly behind us, I started researching legal aid clinics in Eugene. I typed with purpose, every click grounding me in something real. "I'll need proof of injury, too," I muttered. "May's bruises. Her nose." Gramps opened a drawer and pulled out a boxy disposable camera. "I took some shots last night. Old habit." I took it from him. "Thank you." May shifted closer on the couch. "I want to talk," she said, barely above a breath. "To someone official. I'm tired of pretending I'm fine. Tired of feeling like if I say anything, it'll only make things worse." I looked at her, this girl who'd spent years shrinking herself to survive, and saw something new behind her eyes. Not just pain. Fire. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A low voice, deep and gravelly. "We know where you are. You have until sunset." The line went dead. I stared at the screen, then at the cabin door, which suddenly seemed far too thin. "We need to go," I said, standing up so fast the chair legs scraped the floor. "Now." Gramps didn't argue. He grabbed his keys. May clutched the camera to her chest like a shield. I grabbed the will, the letters, and the only thing that mattered more than evidence, my sister. We didn't pack. We didn't speak. We left everything behind. Just grabbed the camera, the will, and the girl who refused to be broken. We drove straight to the clinic. May leaned into me in the passenger seat, her face pale, the bruises now blooming in shades of yellow and blue. She hadn't said much since the phone call, just rested her head against the cold window, watching the trees blur past. Her eyes were glassy, but she hadn't cried. Inside the waiting room, everything smelled of bleach and stale coffee. The walls were covered in faded posters about flu shots and back pain. I checked her in, handed over her ID and mine, and we were told to wait. The nurse called her in within 10 minutes. I wanted to go with her, but May just whispered, "I got this." I stayed seated, the camera resting on my lap, one hand clasped tightly around it like it was a lifeline. Through the glass window behind the counter, I saw Gramps still in the truck, engine running for the heat. His silhouette leaned back slightly, arms crossed. I knew this was all too much for him, but he came anyway. That meant something. I stared at the second hand of the clock until I felt someone step into the room. Heavy boots, slow, intentional. I looked up. The man standing in front of me was about 6 feet tall, built like an old lineman gone soft with time. Gray mustache, uniform, sheriff's badge on his chest. "You?" he asked, his voice smooth, as if chatting over pie and coffee. I nodded. "I'm Sheriff Wallace. Mind if we talk a sec?" His tone was light, almost friendly, but I could feel something underneath it. That off-note people play when they're pretending too hard. He didn't sit, just stood a little too close. "I know your stepdad. Hank and I go way back. T-ball days, you know." I looked him straight in the eye. "This isn't about baseball." His smile twitched. "Just wanted to see what all the noise was about. Your mom called us early this morning. She's concerned. Said you might have, taken May without consent. She called for that." I folded my arms. Not for the broken nose, the bruises, the fact that May crawled to her phone to call me because she was afraid he'd kill her. His eyes didn't flinch. Look, kiddo, I get it. Families fight, and sometimes kids say things that sound worse than they are. Maybe she got hurt tripping over something and didn't want to get grounded. I mean, she's still technically a minor, right? I stood up. She's 17, and that kid happens to be terrified of going back. He shrugged. Just saying. Stirring things up might bring Child Protective Services into this. If it turns into a custody thing, they don't always leave kids with siblings. Might end up in foster care, and you don't want that. I felt something cold rise in my chest. It wasn't fear. It was clarity. This man wasn't here to help. He was here to quiet things down, to make this disappear. Is that a warning? I asked. He gave me a long, practiced look. I'm saying it's complicated. The door to the exam rooms opened. May stood there, hugging her coat around her thin frame. Nose still red but cleaned. She must have heard the last few words. Her face went tight, jaw clenched. I'm not making it up, she said, her voice low but steady. He did it. He's done it before. Wallace turned. Sweetheart, no one's saying you're lying. When I was 11, May cut in. He broke my arm. Mom said if I told anyone, I'd get taken away and never see her again. The room froze. Even the receptionist stopped pretending to type. The sheriff looked at her, then at me. His smile was gone now, just silence. A nurse came out from behind May, middle-aged blonde, with tired eyes and good instincts. She put her hand on May's shoulder gently. Sheriff Wallace, she said firmly. As a mandated. Reporter, I need you to step back. This is a medical facility, and she just disclosed prior abuse. He didn't say anything at first, then gave a curt nod. I'll make a note, he muttered, turning to leave. When the door shut behind him, May leaned into the nurse. I'm sorry, she whispered. You have nothing to be sorry for, the nurse replied softly. You did the right thing. I stepped forward and touched May's hand. You were brave. Her fingers gripped mine. I'm tired of being scared. We thanked the nurse, got a printout of her injuries, and stepped back outside. The sky was overcast now, and the light had that strange gray tint that made everything feel like winter, even when it wasn't snowing. Gramps was still waiting, tapping the steering wheel with slow fingers. Back in the truck, I pulled out my phone and called a legal aid hotline I'd bookmarked last night. My voice was clear now. No tremble, no second-guessing. Yes. Hi, I began. My sister was assaulted. We have photos, medical documentation, and an old will that confirms our standing as heirs. Her alleged abuser is known in this town, even to law enforcement. I need someone who isn't afraid to fight this. The woman on the other end asked a few questions. I answered each with a calm I didn't know I still had. Next to me, May exhaled slowly, curled into a ball beneath her jacket. I'm proud of you, I whispered. She didn't say anything, but for the first time all day, she smiled. Just a little. We pulled into Gramps' driveway just before sundown. I helped May inside, then set the disposable camera and the will on the kitchen table. I'd scan and upload copies as backup. Gramps turned on the radio softly, something low and crackling. Old blues drifting through the living room while May dozed off on the couch under two blankets. I checked the windows, locked the doors. Everything felt still. Then came the shatter. Glass burst into the room. The window by the front door. A rock clattered to the floor wrapped in paper. I ran over, heart pounding. The note was scrawled in thick black marker. Leave this alone. The rock had landed just inches from May's head. Now it sat on my kitchen table beside a puddle of melted ice and glass. I held the note. Soggy, smeared ink, but still legible. You think you've won? Stay quiet, or next time it won't be a rock. My thumb brushed across the corner where the paper had been curled tight around the stone. May was asleep again, but her breathing was shallow, uneven. She hadn't let go of the blanket since the crash. I spent the next hour sweeping glass barefoot, the broom too loud. Then I went through every window, every door, double-checking each lock with a kind of slow, mechanical dread. Outside, the wind rattled the gutters. Inside, it was colder than it should have been. At dawn, I left a note for Gramps and slipped the evidence into a Ziploc. May was curled on the couch under my old quilt. I didn't want to wake her. Gramps had fallen asleep in the armchair. He was stubborn, but I was grateful he'd insisted on staying. That girl doesn't need to see more men who walk away, he'd muttered the night before, unfolding the blanket over his knees like he was settling in for war. The sheriff's office was quiet, not the same one we'd visited before. This was the downtown building. I asked for whoever was on shift, specifically not Wallace. The deputy who came out was younger, alert, with eyes that didn't dodge. His name tag said, Ruiz. He took one look at the rock and the note and said, "You did the right thing bringing this in. No, kiddo. No T-ball memories." He asked to keep it for forensic review. I handed it over and left with his business card, a calm voice in my head whispering, "Don't trust yet, but take the help that's offered." By the time I returned home, May was at the table with Gramps, poking at a bowl of oatmeal like it might fight back. Her face was swollen, but no longer bleeding. The bruises had started to bloom in shades of purple and blue beneath the skin. Gramps sipped coffee in silence, one eye always on the window. That evening, the call came. "Miss Keiss, this is Deputy Ruiz. We ran the note. The handwriting matches your mother's employment records. She filled out forms when she worked for the county library 3 years ago. Do you want to press charges?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." That single word cracked something inside me. I thought I'd feel relief, but all I felt was hollowed out, like I was confirming something I tried for years to deny. She really did this. I filed for an emergency restraining order the same hour. The court clerk didn't ask too many questions. Maybe she saw the bruises under May's eyes in the photos. Maybe she'd seen it all before. Either way, by sunset, I had a signed paper in my hand and a locksmith pulling into the driveway. May watched from the porch, arms crossed tightly around herself. Gramps stood beside her like a statue, his cane planted firm. "You girls aren't sleeping alone again." End of story. Later that night, May came into my room, holding something small and pink. "I found this in the back of my closet. I used to hide things inside. I don't know why I kept it." She handed me her old music box. A plastic ballerina spun inside under a cracked mirror. I opened the lid, and the faintest tinkle of off-key music spilled out. Beneath the felt lining, something shifted. I peeled back the cloth. Taped under the panel was a tiny SD card. "He didn't know I had it," she whispered. We sat side by side on my bed while I plugged it into my laptop. The screen blinked to life. The first file played immediately, a phone video, wobbly and dim, pointed at the hallway. I saw May, maybe 10, maybe 11, being yanked by the arm through the door frame. Her face turned toward the camera for a second. Tears streamed down, barely above a whisper, "Please don't." The second video was darker, mostly shadows and muffled sounds, but one voice was clear. "My mother's. If you ruin this family again, I swear to God you'll regret it. Do you understand me?" Click. I stopped the file. May wasn't crying. She just stared. The SD card had 5 more files, but I couldn't keep going. Not yet. I emailed everything to a friend of mine, Sharon, a legal advocate based in Eugene, who owed me more favors than she liked to admit. 20 minutes later, she called. "Keiss, this isn't just a restraining order situation. You've got evidence of historical abuse, intimidation, accessory to assault and obstruction. I'm sending this to the federal unit. You're doing the right thing." I nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see me. And just as I started to believe we might be safe, May screamed from the kitchen. "He's here!" I was halfway across the living room when May's scream tore through the quiet. It wasn't a startled yelp, it was raw, terrified, full body fear. I bolted toward the kitchen, bare feet hitting hardwood, arms swinging as instinct took over. May had slid down behind the island counter, knees curled into her chest, the blanket still clutched in her arms. Her breath came in ragged gulps. One hand trembled as she pointed toward the side window. He was right there, staring at me. I moved fast, grabbed the bat I kept under the sink, old, chipped wood from a community league I'd quit a decade ago. I crept toward the window, careful not to slip on the scattered shards from earlier, but there was no one. What there were muddy boot prints right outside the back door, clear as day. I locked every bolt, closed every curtain, double-checked the back latch, and still May was shaking. The split in her lip from earlier injuries had reopened. I didn't say anything, just sat down next to her and held her until her breathing slowed again. It took the sheriff over 40 minutes to arrive. When he finally pulled up, he didn't even bother with his lights. Just strolled to the porch like he was showing up to a neighbor's barbecue. Wallace tilted his head. Raccoons get bold this time of year. Maybe he saw a shadow. I showed him the prints. I showed him the rock. I even opened my laptop and pulled up the video files we'd found earlier. Footage of May being dragged across a hallway, her voice pleading off-screen. Wallace didn't take a single note. "You don't want to overreact, Callus," he said, tugging at the buttons of his jacket. "You'll scare the girl more than she already is. Did you even watch the footage?" I demanded. "I glanced," he muttered. "Looks like a domestic spat." I watched him walk out like he hadn't just dismissed actual evidence. My stomach churned. Something about him felt complicit. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't know. The message just said, "It's Deputy Ryan. Call me. Use this number." Off the record. I stepped outside, stood next to the old shed behind the house, and made the call. He answered on the first ring. "You weren't imagining it," he said. "Wallace has been playing poker with your stepdad for years. They go back a long way." My jaw tightened. "So that's why he wouldn't even write up a report." "That's why," Ryan said. "But I've been pulling records anyway. You need to hear something." He offered to meet near the lake, just off County Road 11. Far enough to be private. Close enough, if I could leave May sleeping under Gramps' watchful eye. I drove out just before midnight, headlights off until the last bend. Ryan sat on the tailgate of his truck, holding out a pair of wired earbuds and a phone. "Old 911 call from a domestic complaint at your mom's house 3 years ago. It was never followed up." I took the earbuds, pressed them in. At first, it was static. Then, a female voice sobbing, shuffling, then, "Just hold her still." A male voice shouted in the background. Then a loud thud and more crying. Ryan paused the clip. Recognized the voice. I didn't, but May did. She was sitting in the front seat of my car. I'd brought her because she begged not to be left alone. Her hand reached out, gently touched my arm. "That's Jacob," she said. "My brother." My stomach dropped. Ryan didn't say a word. He didn't have to. "He used to lock me in the garage," May whispered. "When Mom went shopping. Said I was too loud. One time I screamed for so long I passed out. When Mom got home, he said I fell down again." I closed my eyes, biting the inside of my cheeks, so hard I tasted blood. I had known Jacob was cold. He was never the type to check on her, never the type to help her up when she fell. But I never imagined this. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room, watching the shadows flicker across the walls, replaying the recording over and over in my head. A voice I used to trust, helping a man hurt my sister, helping silence her. By morning, Ryan sent another message. "I found something else. You need to hear it." This time, he didn't meet in person. He sent an audio file through a secure link. It started with a woman's voice. Familiar, controlled. "Just say the injuries were from a fall. We don't need another lawsuit." Then another woman's voice, quieter, unsure. "But she said he hit her." "That's not what happened." The first voice snapped. "And if she says otherwise, she'll ruin this family again." I recognized the voice instantly. It was my mother. Ryan added a note, clinic visit 2 years ago. Recording submitted by an informant who overheard the conversation. Her partner, your stepdad, filed a $380,000 insurance claim for back injuries from that incident. And just like that, the last piece clicked into place. The lies, the minimizing, the silence. My mother hadn't just forgiven him. She protected him again and again because their entire house of cards was built on deceit. Because if May had been taken seriously, the insurance money might have vanished. The lawsuits would have reopened. The family's image shattered. I stared at my phone until the screen dimmed. May was still sleeping when I got back, curled up on the couch with the same blanket, her cheek resting against her elbow, a small scratch on her lip from where she'd bitten down during the panic earlier. She looked so young like that, so fragile, but not broken. She had survived more than I ever knew, and she was still here. I brushed a piece of hair from her forehead and whispered, "I promise you this ends now." And just when I thought the betrayal was over, the court date came, and she brought him. With a lawyer. The morning air was still sharp when I wheeled May up the courthouse ramp. Her hair was braided loosely over one shoulder, a soft blanket folded in her lap, her hands resting on it like she didn't quite trust herself to be steady. I'd brought her a simple cardigan, the blue one with embroidered robins she always liked, but she didn't put it on. I think she wanted them to see the bruises still blooming under her sleeves. She never said that aloud, but I saw the resolve in her jaw. Across the aisle in the courtroom, my mother sat next to him, the man who had shattered May's nose and left her curled in blood on the kitchen floor. His suit was too big, like he was trying to look important, but it only made him appear smaller somehow. Mom leaned close to whisper something. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. The bailiff called the session to order. My pulse thudded in my neck as I sat down beside May, my hand still on the back of her wheelchair. I could feel her trembling. She didn't want pity. She wanted justice, and I owed her that much. The defense attorney, with slicked back hair and too much cologne, stood first. Your Honor, he began smoothly. This case is based on emotion, not fact. My client, Mr. Weston, is a man of modest means who took in a child that wasn't his. He gestured at May dismissively, and did his best under difficult circumstances. Miss Keiss, however, has a history of instability, unresolved guilt, and personal vendettas. This is not about truth. It's about revenge. I didn't flinch, but May's grip tightened on the armrest. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s with silver hair swept into a knot, raised a single brow. Let's see if the facts match the theory. When my turn came, I stood. I could feel my knees wobble, but I didn't let it show. Your Honor, I said clearly, I have a video file from my father's old security system, dated March 12th, 5 years ago. It's grainy, but the audio is clear. I asked the court to view it. There was a slight pause, then a nod. Play it. The lights dimmed. The screen flickered to life. It started in our old kitchen, dimly lit, late evening. May, maybe 12 at the time, sat at the table eating cereal, her feet not touching the ground. He walked in behind her, yelling something unintelligible at first. Then the audio picked up. You think you're special? Just like your sister, running your mouth. May turned to look at him. She didn't even speak. He yanked her out of the chair, so fast her body slammed against the fridge. The camera angle didn't miss it. Then came the part I'd never seen until Ryan gave me the USB. My mother, standing in the corner, arms crossed, watching. Not moving. The room went so silent you could hear someone breathing 3 rows back. He kneed her in the stomach hard. She folded, crawled. Then the screen went dark. The lights came up. The jury looked stunned. One of them wiped tears from her eyes. Even the defense lawyer's face had lost its confidence. He leaned in to whisper to my mother, who stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. The judge adjusted her glasses slowly. Is there any explanation for this footage, Miss Weston? My mother didn't answer. Next, a nurse from the local clinic took the stand. She looked familiar. She treated May once for a sprained wrist. Her voice was steady but strained. I flagged 3 separate injuries on May's medical chart between 2018 and 2020. Each time, reports were retracted by her mother. She looked at the judge. We believed we were protecting a family. We were wrong. The judge nodded slightly, then reached for a folder beside her. I've also received a sealed file from the district attorney's office. My heart stalled. She opened it slowly, then looked directly at my mother. Angela Weston, you are hereby charged with obstruction of justice, perjury, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. The air left my lungs. 2 officers approached. My mother's face twisted, not in confusion, but pure, unadulterated anger. This is a mistake, she barked. I did what I had to do. You think raising a disabled child is easy. You think I had choices. She stood, eyes flashing, voice sharp like a blade. She was always weak, always crying, always needing something. And Keiss is always judging me. You don't know what it's like to hold this family together. The judge didn't flinch. Ma'am, you are out of order. Mom kept shouting as they escorted her out, but I didn't hear the words anymore. May didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just watched her go, her face unreadable. It was well past 3 p.m. when we got back to Gramps' house. The air had turned warm with a gentle breeze stirring the trees. I parked in the driveway and carried the grocery bags in first. Soup, crackers, chamomile tea. Then I wheeled May up the porch ramp. She stayed silent until I opened the screen door. "Can we stay here?" she asked, almost a whisper. "Just stay for a while." I nodded. "As long as you want." That evening, I changed the locks again. I installed a small camera above the porch, and at May's request, I hung the old wind chimes by the kitchen window, the ones shaped like little leaves. Their soft, delicate sound danced in the air. We sat on the front steps and shared soup from the same pot, legs curled under us like we were girls again. No TV, no phone, just quiet. After a long while, May leaned her head on my shoulder. "You believed me when no one else did," she whispered. I didn't say anything. I just squeezed her hand. "Have you ever stood up for someone when the cost was everything? Would you still do it again? Tell me what you think. I really want to know."